Welcome to Satsang.
Hello Vishrant. Can you please speak about today's topic? What does it mean to love thy neighbour?
I remember hearing this at school when I was in religious education class. Love thy neighbour as thyself. And I didn't really understand it. How do you love your neighbour? How do you love people you might not even know? And to go one step further, how would you love an enemy, someone who doesn't like you, someone who wants to hurt you? And so I opened the Bible and I had to look for the answers, and there was no answers. There's no explanation as to how you love your neighbour or how you love an enemy. There is just the statement, love thy neighbour. It wasn't until I discovered that love itself isn't perceived unless a person is open, that I realized that a lot of the time it's almost impossible to love anyone, whether they're your neighbour or your enemy, or even your own children or your partner, if you're not open. Openness of mind, undefended mind, allows for that connection, allows for us to perceive love. And in that perception of love, we then love our neighbour. And if love is there, we'll love our enemy as well. And so people think, oh, I love this or I love that. Well, do you really? Why don't you have a look and see what it is inside of you that's actually happening? Are you experiencing love or are you experiencing something else? Because when you truly love someone, you just want to do anything for them, whether they're your enemy or your friend, whether they're your partner or a stranger. Because that's how real love affects the mind. Now, we have all sorts of other understandings that we think are love. A lot of people think that primal bonding is love. That's where we get together with someone and we're attracted to them and we've bonded primally with them to have children so our species can survive. And quite often we might call that love. But that's not love, that's primal bonding for the survival of the species. Love is very different. Love is the true jewel of consciousness, and it appears when we are open, and it is always here. And so your openness is going to depend, your ability to love your neighbour is going to depend on your openness. The same as your ability to love your enemy is going to depend on your openness, your undefendedness. It's up to you, because you're the one that will support your closure, or you're the one that will support your openness. It's up to you. Are there any questions, any statements, or any challenges to this teaching today?
The first question, do you feel love towards people who you don't like?
Yes. As a matter of fact, there's a lot. It's not so much I don't like people. I don't like some of the things that people get up to. I don't like some of the things that people do, and I don't like some of the things that people say. But that doesn't stop me from loving them.
Why is that?
I can't help it. I can't help it. Love is here. And when love is present, you love everybody. You love the good, the bad, and the ugly. You can't help it because love is present.
So for you, what is the difference between when you like and when you love people?
Well, like's kind of preference, isn't it? I like this or I don't like this. It's more of a preference. I'd prefer you didn't do this. I'd prefer you did this. Preference. Whereas love doesn't have any conditions on it. Love is unconditional. It just loves. And it doesn't do anything else. It just loves. That's what love does. It loves. And it's always here. It's very beautiful. Up until I was, I think, 33 or 34, I hadn't experienced a great deal of love because I was too closed. I thought I loved. I thought I loved people. I thought I loved my partners, my wife. But the truth is, a lot of it was just primal bonding and an idea that I loved because I wasn't open enough to truly perceive love. I hadn't undone enough of my defense systems to truly perceive love. By the time I left school, I was pretty closed. School was a pretty rough place. I closed up to defend myself like a lot of people do. And there was this indication that we all love, and I thought I did, but it wasn't until I experienced unconditional love in my 30s that I realized, ooh, this is different. This is amazingly beautiful. For this, I'd die for a stranger. This is so lovely. And then I realized, I'd been too closed to perceive love. So I went about opening myself up, removing the obstacles, which were mostly defense systems, so I could perceive love. Because love is the only thing on this plane that's worth anything. Everything else is a sham.
How can I know when I'm feeling love or if I'm just bonded and attached to someone?
Yeah, it's difficult. I thought that I loved a lot until I experienced unconditional love. It was like overwhelmingly beautiful. And the first time I experienced it, I was actually lost at sea off the Abrolhos Islands, 60 miles off the coast of West Australia. And I was in the water with a life jacket on, and I had hypothermia because I'd been in the water for 18 hours. The boat had sunk. And I was there with my partner, who I did marry, and I knew that we were going to die because we were being circled by sharks, and the storm was raging because the edge of a cyclone had hit, and I didn't think we stood a chance in hell of surviving. And I looked across at my partner, and I felt this regret that I'd cost her life because I was the skipper of the boat that we're on, the little boat that we're on. It was my fault that we're out there, my responsibility, and I'd cost her life. And in the regret, something opened in me, and I experienced this amazing, overwhelming love for her. And afterwards, I went, wow, what was that? I didn't, at the time, it was just what was happening. But afterwards, I remembered it and I went, that was very, very different. And then I started looking for that again. And it wasn't for another year or more. Yeah, more than a year then I experienced it again. And it was funny, the same woman who I'd married about a year and a half later, I had a baby. And when the baby was born, I held the baby, and this overwhelming love came again. And it was so beautiful. And I realized it wasn't my love, it was just love was present in the room. And it was just so, so lovely. And it changed my life because I recognized that that was worthy of pursuit. Up until then, I'd pursued a lot of other things, mostly material success. Now I had a new pursuit, the pursuit of heart. And that was a big change, because that meant I had to undo myself to find it.
Next, Neil would like to ask a question.
Hello, Neil.
Hello, Vishrant. So my question is that do we have the authority to control who we should love? Because something that I personally noticed about love is that it's something happens in me and I'm not the creator of that feeling. I love my mother. And when I thought like, why do I love my mother? The answer was that it's a reciprocation of the love that she gave me throughout her life. So that's why I love her, but it's impossible for me to love my neighbor or a random person on the street the same way I love my mother, because we never had that connection. So is it really my choice to love anyone that I want?
Okay, so love doesn't take prisoners, and it doesn't take favourites. Love just loves. And so what's happening is your mind is filtering whatever's happening. And you have a filter that allows you to love your mother, but doesn't allow you to love a stranger. And that's kind of like a defense system of some kind that's in the way. I found in taking down the defense systems, I love everyone. I love everyone equally. My daughters, my mother, my friends, people who like me, people who don't like me. I don't have anything that's in the way of love.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So it's up to you. It's like, what's in the way? What's keeping you closed? And if you really get honest with yourself and have a look, you'll see that there's things that keep you closed towards other people. You're thinking you love your mother because she was your mother. She did certain things for you. I'm telling you that love is unconditional. It doesn't have conditions on it. It just loves.
Mm-hmm. But isn't it normal to expect something like, I gave you this and I also expect something from you. I help you. I also expect a help in return from you.
Yeah, that's a business deal. That's a business deal that mind does, but love has nothing to do with business. Love just loves. It doesn't have conditions on its love. The mind has conditions on everything, but love just loves. And when we get out of the way enough, love is always here.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, Vishwan.
Thank you, Neil.
The next question is from Susha.
Hello, Susha.
Hi, Vishrant. So, Vishrant, what was the biggest, or what were the biggest obstacles in your way to openness prior to awakening?
The one that wanted to awaken was the biggest obstacle in the way of awakening. You see, the one that wants awakening, the one that wants enlightenment, doesn't make it to enlightenment. It can't, because the I itself is a dream. It's not real, but it's the one that wants enlightenment, and it needs to learn to die. It is the obstacle. There is no other obstacle. In learning to die, which is unconditional surrender, it facilitates the possibility of enlightenment. There is no other way. The I has to learn to lay down in surrender. And then you have a mind that will support enlightenment. If the I doesn't surrender, even if awareness finds itself through self-inquiry, more than likely the I, in its contracting and resisting to the world, will drag awareness back to itself. And so the knowing of self will be lost. The satori will be over. Every opportunity to practice acceptance of what is teaches the mind surrender.
Is it the biggest obstacle in openness too?
Oh yeah. Well, the I itself is a contraction. And it's not even in time. By the time it recognizes itself and what it's doing, time has already passed. It's behind time. Love is actually in real time. It's actually happening now. It's here now. The I is never here now. There is no other obstacle, only the I. Only the I and its myriad of defense systems and escape methodologies, so it doesn't have to feel things.
How did you undo those?
Well, it was a slow process. I had teachers from the age of 19 that were teaching me, and slowly but surely I undid my mind. I undid all the belief systems that created contraction and resistance, because it was clear to me that if I create resistance to life, I'm creating suffering for myself. And I just wasn't into it. And so the first major belief systems that I removed were the belief systems in victim orientation. Because any time we create ourselves or volunteer to be a victim to whatever, we go into resistance to life. We go in resistance and we create suffering. And I just wasn't into it. It was really clear to me that that was a choice. And I chose often enough not to resist, not to be a victim, until the patterning of my mind changed and I didn't start seeing myself as a victim of this. I stopped the blame game. And this was probably one of the best things I feel I ever learned. To not be in a world where I blamed other people, situations, or even myself for what was going on. I took responsibility that I made me feel. Because I do. Not the world, not other people. I make me feel. So no matter what happens out there, I'm not prepared to be a victim of it, because I'm just not prepared to create suffering for myself.
The entire world operates on being a victim. It's in the news. It's in whoever talks to whoever. There is drama and there's victimness. I can't see anything else anymore. And sometimes I have to play. And in that play, in pretense, I fall into the trap of becoming a victim when I didn't want to be one.
Yeah. I think this is one of the main reasons that people have trouble raising their consciousness levels, because victim orientation is actually a dream. It's not real, and it can lead to anger if the blame gets strong enough. And of course, that's about as the lowest form of consciousness you can get, to be angry. You're in a nasty dream that you think is real, but it's not. And it's all related to being a victim. Blaming something or someone for how you feel.
So I should not even try to pretend and play the game, because I will fall into it.
It's really, if your consciousness levels rise, it's really clear to you that all victim-orientated thinking is lower consciousness. Why would you ever want to do it?
Yeah.
It's like banging your head against the wall. When you see that you're banging your head against the wall, you stop. Being a victim of life or other people or yourself even is you banging your head against the wall.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
The next question is from Kalimba.
Hey, Kalimba.
Hi, Vishrant. I think the topic today really resonates with me and will with a lot of other people. When I look at myself generally, I consider myself fairly loving and accepting of people. But I have a lot of difficulty with unpleasant people. One of the things I do is I play bridge twice a week. It's a good social thing and it's good for your brain. There's one guy there who is insensitive, arrogant, and is always upsetting people, either the people at his table, or he'll start saying, you shouldn't do, and it sort of goes around the room. You go, shut up, John. And it's like, I totally understand intellectually your concept. When I listen to it without provocation from outside, it totally resonates with me. But when I'm in the room with that person, I can't, I find it impossible to love him. Can you give us any pointers on that one?
Well, I have found that part inside myself, that insensitive, arrogant, loudmouth, and I found a way to love that part of me. And we're going back a long way now. It begins first by accepting that part of yourself and then loving that part of yourself. And then you don't have too many problems with what happens outside of you when you meet yourself outside of you. Because really, we all have the same stuff inside us, whether we run it or not. And so when I meet someone like that, I might not like their behavior, but I can still love them because I love that part of me.
I've heard you say this so often now. As I said, what you say resonates with me so much. But all I've got to say, there's a world of difference between knowing the path and walking the path. I remember some months ago, I was talking about Donald Trump and you said, love him. There's something in me that I don't know where the switch is to turn switches off. I can't stand him. I can't stand Barnaby Joyce. I can't stand Peter Dutton. How do I learn to love people like that?
Yeah, I can't help it. It's just that I know that there, but for the grace of God, goes I. Because, you know, they are just running true to their patterns. That's all they're doing. They're running true to their programming from their upbringing, their schooling, their religion. They can't help what they're doing, not really. The same as you're running true to your patterns from your upbringing, your religion, your government, whoever programmed you. And there, but for the grace of God, goes I or you, because we could have been programmed that way. So I don't see these people as necessarily wrong. I just see them as programmed differently. And we could have been programmed the same way as they were.
Yeah, as always, when you say it, I totally understand it. And yet there's something inside me that says, if you love somebody who's being like that, then what's the impetus in them to stop? They go, oh, my behavior's fine. Whereas if you said to them, well, if you said to them, shut up, you're being an idiot, then you're being the idiot from this side, and that's not helping.
Oh, just because you love somebody doesn't mean you can't put boundaries in place if they're doing something that's annoying. Mate, I got kids. I definitely can put boundaries in place while loving them. You know, you don't have to close down to actually put a boundary in place. You can tell someone to be quiet if they're being obnoxious, but you can do it from a place of openness. You don't have to do it from a place of closure.
Yeah, I guess the difference is like, John, can you be quiet, please? Or then, John, shut up.
No, you can still say, John, shut up, but from a place of openness.
Yeah. I think my problem, well, I know my problem is that and I've had this from therapists I've been with and friends, one of my major drawbacks is I'm constantly judging myself. Most of the time, I'm happy with how I am because I think that I'm a very positive, loving, giving, sharing person. But then every now and again, I do things or I'll think of things and I'll tighten up and go, Jesus, Kalimba, you're just... And I remember in a poem once I wrote, and I wrote this, but I don't live by it. One of the lines in my poem was, you can't love another until you first love yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, but you've got a thing where you're judging yourself, Kalimba, where you're holding yourself in contempt.
Yep.
You know, and that's causing problems for you. You know, you're not willing to fail. And as human beings, we fail a lot. We do our best, but we still fail. In unconscious moments, if we haven't changed our patterning, we revert back to default patterns that can be quite unsavory. We fail. And it's okay to fail. It just is. And if you make it okay to fail, then you won't give yourself such a hard time when you get it wrong.
Yeah, I'll try and work with that.
Well, it's true. It's true. You know, we're faulty, all of us. We've all been programmed badly. It's how it is. Beating yourself up for it's not a good idea.
Yeah, I think one of my therapists said, look, why beat yourself up? There's plenty of other people out there who'll do it for you. And I sort of saw the humor in that.
Yeah, well, I got onto that one when I was a kid at school. You know, why beat myself up? Everyone else is willing to do it for me.
Yeah, what I think I need is a 6-month retreat at your place, mate, to sort of find it. Anyway, look, thank you so much for your feedback, and I'm going to keep working on it, and maybe one day I'll have an aha moment and go, oh, wow, it was there all the time.
Uh-huh.
Thank you, Vish.
Thanks, Kalimba.
The next question is from Abhay.
Hi, Vishrant.
Hello, Bahi.
Vishrant, when I'm singing certain songs, it's a playlist, I can say. So when I'm singing those songs or listening to them, I am very open, and I feel pockets of the unconditional love, what you talk about. I think that is what it is. But there are times when I'm really close with the same people and same situations. So I feel like these songs are helping me to stay open. Can I use this, or it will be escapism, or I'm forgetting the word. So yeah.
You need to become more conscious of what you're doing. If you really watch your mind and see how you're closed, you'll be able to undo the closures. Just using bhajans or songs to keep you open is like a temporary fix. It's not a permanent fix. The permanent fix is when we can remove the obstacles that close us. And we can only do that by finding them and actually removing them. And so you have to have a look at what belief systems come into play to close you up to these people, and examine these belief systems and take them apart. Otherwise, you're just using a coping mechanism that you'll have to use forever and a day.
Yes, it sometimes feels spiritual bypassing kind, because then I'm in that state where I can deal with those people or the situations.
Yeah, that's right. You're using spiritual bypassing. And unfortunately, you have to keep using it because it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't change anything.
So once again, it is watching the mind that is going to help me in openness.
Yeah, watching the mind and seeing what it's up to. How is it closing? Why is it closing? And start examining all of those things to undo them so it doesn't happen. You see, basically, in a lot of ways, you're teaching yourself surrender by doing that. A surrendered mind accepts everything. It's how it is. And a surrendered mind is at peace. An uptight mind that is constantly resisting life is not at peace. It's actually torturing itself.
Yes, I can feel that. Yes. And there's one more, maybe it's a different question. There's like a set of people, you can say, whom I don't get along with. I have had a negative or a bitter past with them. So today I don't have any connections, you can say. I don't even talk to them or respond to their messages. So if this is done from the place of openness, that is, I'm not contracting or missing them or hurting myself for doing this, is that okay? Or I should try and see here also what the blockage is to not respond, why I'm not responding to them, their messages.
Well, it's completely up to you what you do or you don't do. Openness is lovely. That doesn't necessarily mean you'll respond, though. You're kind of, in a way, putting the cart before the horse, because you don't really want to talk to these people because there's something about them that's maybe damaging to you or hurtful to you, but you can remain open. You can remain open with them. You're trying to jump over somehow. It's okay to have boundaries for people who are having problems, you're having problems with, but can you have those boundaries from a place of openness? You don't have to close to have a boundary. It's like with little kids. You actually have to give them boundaries, so they know what's safe in the world, but you can still be wide open with them while you're giving them the boundaries.
Yeah, I understand that now.
Yeah. Yeah, just because you love people or doesn't necessarily mean you go and hang out with them. They mightn't like that.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Vishrant. Thank you.
The next question has been written by Sukaran. I accept the majority of people needs a guide or guru. However, is there a danger of overemphasizing the role of the guru, as the guru points to the door, but the seeker has to travel that path alone?
Okay. So you're talking to someone who had basically teachers since the age of 19 on the subject of higher consciousness. And I do not feel that if I did not have these teachers to show me the way, I do not feel that I would have been successful in raising my consciousness levels, because my mind, like everyone else's mind, is hell-bent on survival. And a lot of the methodologies and a lot of the understandings towards higher consciousness involve removing obstacles, defense systems, things that help you survive, things that help you become comfortable. And the mind is programmed to seek out comfort and to avoid pain. It's always looking for an easy way. And so it can step off the track onto the wrong path quite easily. But if you have someone who's further ahead than you, who's walking with you, they can say, hey, you stepped off the path. It's over here. And if you're a good student, which means someone who's willing to listen, someone who's willing to be a beginner, you'll comply. And because of that compliance, you can find your way out of the jungle. You can find your way home. And so, left to the ego, which is simply a survival mechanism, my understanding is your chances of finding home would be pretty slim. On the other hand, if you're with someone who's already at home, someone who's already awake, and they're showing you the way, I would say your chances were way, way better. But of course, that's up to you. And I definitely have a prejudice because I've had teachers my whole life who have shown me the right way to go. And my gratitude to them is enormous. I think in a lot of ways, the ego likes to think that it can do it itself. That's an ego trip. I definitely couldn't have done it myself.
The next question is from Sukaran. You speak a lot about practicing openness and acceptance. Also, you have said that understanding does nothing. Isn't there a danger of putting the cart before the horse? And I don't mean accumulating knowledge. Also, I recognize that one needs to put their house in order and live a compatible life in seeking a life of higher consciousness. But is not practice a form of non-acceptance and resistance that causes internal conflict? Through understanding in the form of self-inquiry, choiceless self-awareness, such actions will occur naturally.
Yeah, that's a belief system, not a reality. I'm sorry, but I was an Advaita Vedanta teacher for 10 years, and I was wondering why people were finding themselves as beingness quite regularly, yet not staying there. Why people were finding home, yet not staying at home. And it became very, very clear to me that people hadn't done the work on their mind to prepare a mind that would support enlightenment. And that was one of the biggest failings of Advaita Vedanta. People practicing something in the marketplace that was originally designed for sadhus in caves and monasteries. It doesn't work. What works is to develop a mind that will support enlightenment and then self-inquire. If you study Ramana Maharshi, he stated this clearly, that self-inquiry was for people who had already done all the work, not for beginners.
The next question has been written by Stephen. There's a line in the Irish tale of Red Hanrahan. I hope I remember it correctly. I think it's, they were more in love with the idea of being in love than in love itself. Can you comment on this, please?
Yeah, an idea is not love. Ideas belong to the mind. Love is real. It doesn't belong to the mind. It's not a fabrication. Everything that the mind produces is imagined, is a fabrication. Thought is a fabrication. It's all dream. Love, on the other hand, is actually real. It's always here, yet it's not so perceived because the mind is in the way. Huge difference. One is a fabrication, one is a reality.
Next, we have a message to you. Will you please let Vishrant know that Betohe's son sends his regards? Does he remember Betohe, who is an old neighbour of his?
I still hold Betohe in my heart with love. I considered him a very good friend of mine. He was a beautiful man, and I remember you well too. You were very little when I last saw you. Love to you.
The next question has been written by Ritaraj. What do you love in people which are not to your preferences? Does it come from a non-identification with the preferring mind?
Yeah, the mind's not really involved. It's love's there, and I just love people no matter what they're doing or what they're saying. I just love them. And I don't know another way to put it. The mind is not involved in love. As a matter of fact, the mind is out of the way. Love is here, and I just love. But when I look at that too, the I can't actually love. Love can be here, then the I can claim it. But truthfully, love stands alone. Love is real. The I is not.
The following question is from a viewer. During the journey to superconsciousness, there is a period where I find everything funny and just feel like laughing. When I turn to awareness, it just mellows down. It's like a split in mood. Awareness becomes a no feeling. Can you please comment?
Well, that's pretty accurate. Feelings belong to the mind. Awareness is just aware. It is a nothingness. It is a vast emptiness. And in that appears things like feelings, and they disappear. Thoughts appear, disappear. But awareness remains. It's like the sky. Things appear in the sky, like clouds, and then they disappear. The sky remains. Awareness is a nothingness. It's an emptiness. If you try describing it, you're not going to be able to, because there's no reference points to describe it with. You could go, well, it's empty, it's nothing, it's silent, it's still, it's vast, it has no boundaries. But still, that doesn't describe it. And that is us. That is us. We are that. But not as individuals.
The next question comes from a viewer.
I have before you ask the question, to Betohe's son, I have photographs of your father from the 80s when I was a friend of his. If you contact me, I'll send them to you. Yes, Tosh.
The question is, with openness, we can love our neighbour and an enemy in all situations. Do you also recommend respecting neighbours and enemies in all situations?
Respect for me has always been something that I've given people until they have lost it. You see, the world that we live in, the material world we live in, operates on respect. If you're not respectable, you can't really operate successfully. Everything, in a lot of ways, operates on this respectability. And so it's just a word to describe a way a person is in the world, and how we put different qualities to that. Maybe they're honest, maybe they're generous, maybe they're kind. And then we have trouble respecting people who are dishonest, who are cruel, who aren't loving. But it's only a word, really, which belongs to the mind. It doesn't stop love. If you're open, you'll love even those who aren't respectable. It's up to you. How much love are you allowing depends on how open you are. Because love is always here. If you insist on closing, well, you're the one that's cutting yourself off from love, not the world, not the whatever you're looking at, you. You're responsible for your openness and you're responsible for your closure. It's you.
The next question: are humans the only beings who can achieve enlightenment?
I think so, although I got to say I don't know, because I reckon I heard that Ramana thought a cow was awake, but I never met the cow. Ramana died 4 years before I was born, so I never met him either. But I've met quite a few humans who are awake, but I haven't met an animal yet that's awake, no. I think animals have the potential to wake up when they become humans in their next life, but otherwise I don't know.
Adam asks, how do you become open?
How do you become what?
Open.
Open. Well, you remove everything that closes you. It's pretty simple, really. Closed, open. Remove everything that closes you. Remove everything that creates resistance inside of you. Everything that creates contraction inside of you, remove it. And then you remain open. Up to you. We're all programmed to be closed. We're all programmed to be defended. And so openness is unnatural because it's actually against survival. But if we're interested in raising our consciousness levels, it's the only way. Closure doesn't work. Defendedness doesn't work. Openness does. Openness counts for everything.
The next question has been written by Craig. Good morning, dear Vishrant. I find that as I move about interacting in the world with others, that I do not really engage with the assumed identity of the ones I come across. Instead, I experience their purity and innocence as energy, just as I feel this as myself. It is not overwhelming or lifted, it is calm and quiet. I do this regardless of the expression or active behavior of the other person. I just do not believe the behavior of someone's ego identity. Is this recognizing love?
I don't think so. Yeah. Love is just so beautiful. You just love. You just love. That sounds like a methodology that you're using to avoid contraction over what people are like. It seems to be a coping mechanism to avoid what people are like, rather than undoing the belief systems that contract you to their behavior. And so seeing everybody as the innocent energy and perceiving them that way looks a bit like spiritual bypassing to me. It's a way of jumping over rather than doing the work and undoing all the belief systems that have contraction and resistance in them. As far as being love is concerned, it feels more like an ideology. Love just loves the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it sees, the mind sees what's there. It sees the ugliness, it sees the tragedy, it sees the violence, but love is still there because the mind is open enough to perceive it.
Next, Kalimba would like to ask a question.
Hello, Kalimba.
Hi again, Vishrant. Always, as always in Satsang, it's like being in your presence makes stuff easier. But you've said a couple of times today, all you have to do is remove the obstacles. Now that sounds so easy, but I've been sort of trying to remove them since I first met Osho, like 30 odd years ago. If we have difficulty in, can you give us some pointers? How do we remove these obstacles?
Okay, when you spoke to me earlier, Kalimba, you said you were upset with this man who was arrogant and insensitive, and that you actually had to tell him to shut up. What if you looked at the belief systems around him being arrogant and insensitive and undid those belief systems? That you have a belief system that he shouldn't be like that. What if you undid that belief system completely, and so it was absolutely okay for him to be like that? Because in God's big picture, existence is big picture for that man. How do you honestly know that it's not how he's meant to be?
I can understand that, but I kind of don't choose to be. Like I'll be in a lovely space playing a hand, and then suddenly he'll start doing his thing. And it's like I'll sort of almost shudder, and I can feel other people in the room going the same way. It's like I don't choose to dislike him or react to him. It's just like if somebody bangs a paper bag and blows it up next to you, and you jump. It's not a choice, it's just what happens. And that's what I find with him. It's like he'll do that, and it's like, oh, there'll be this reaction that is, I don't choose to, it just happens.
So if I was there, I wouldn't contract. Why wouldn't I contract, Kalimba?
Because you're awake.
No, I was like this before awakening, mate. I prepared my mind by removing any belief system that caused contraction or resistance in me by challenging it all and putting doubt into it. And so even though that man might be behaving in an insensitive way that even could be abusive, I would be, I wouldn't have a belief system that he should be any different way other than he is, because I've already undone the belief system. That doesn't mean that if he was being abusive to someone, I wouldn't step in and stop him. I might. But I'm not going to contract. I'm not going to go to resistance, because I'm simply not into my own suffering. I've undone the belief systems. People are the way they are, and it's actually okay the way they are. You're making him not okay somewhere.
Yeah, it's not just him, but what I'm going to suggest is, can you have a course, Removing Belief Systems 101, so we can learn how to start doing it?
Byron Katie runs that course out of America. She's pretty good at it. She calls it the work, and I've looked at it. As a matter of fact, before awakening, I trained as a Byron Katie practitioner, and it definitely works. She has a way of challenging the belief systems, taking them apart. It's good. I recommend her.
I'm going to work on doing the work.
Well, you can start with that fellow, I don't know what his name is, who upsets you at the bridge. Sounds like he needs a lot of love, Kalimba, and you might be just the chap.
I'll do my best. Thank you, Vish.
Thank you, Kalimba.
The next question has been written by Neil. If people act based on their programming, then is there free will?
Heck no. There's no free will. Everybody's running true to their patterns and their programming that were put into them genetically and causally through their lifetime by others and by outside influence. Nobody has free will. Everybody is running true to their patterning that they received. Everyone. If you make choices, you've been programmed to make those choices, and you probably never programmed you. It was probably an outside influence.
Susha writes, is it possible for a non-awakened person to be fully open all the time?
Probably not, but a lot of the time. Before awakening, I'd been practicing openness for about 30 years, and I got good at it, because whatever we practice, we get good at. I would have been one of the most closed people you could possibly meet as a teenager, because I had such a violent upbringing. So openness was a task, but I saw the value in it, and I practiced it and practiced it and practiced it, practiced taking apart all the parts inside of myself that would offer resistance or contraction until there was nothing left. I dismantled the house. I reverse engineered all the defense systems. But it took time. And during that time, a lot of it was done in the dark because some of my teachers weren't that clear. But if you're willing to undo yourself, if you're willing to practice, you can change the way you patterned it. And so I had intervention from the age of 19. It's not like I thought of these ideas. I had intervention. I had people come in and program me or deprogram me. That's probably a better way of putting it. And so satsang is intervention. That's what it is. It's intervention. It's helping people to change their patterning so they can support happiness, support freedom, support enlightenment. That's what satsang's about. And it's brilliant. And this would have to be, gosh, the 40th, nearly the 40 years since I've been involved in satsang. 40 years. So grateful. So much gratitude. Thank you for satsang. Good to see you brave hearts here today.